What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Saturdays in the SEC, episode 128. Here to break down week two of the college football season. Feel like we had a mixed bag this weekend. Had some dominant performances, had some good, some bad, some ugly. Kind of what you would typically expect on a college football weekend. Had some pretty sizable upsets, especially if you're Notre Dame coming off a big win week one, then blowing it to Northern Illinois in week two. Right after everybody said they had a clean shot to the playoffs, I guess they had other things in mind. But overall, yeah, pretty wild weekend of college football. We're gonna jump right into the biggest game of the weekend. Um, kicking off on Big Noon kickoff, Texas going to the Big House to play Michigan. I feel like most everybody had a pretty good read on this game. I ended up when the line dropped back under seven, I hammered it at 6.5, really about 30 minutes before kickoff, and um, felt good about it. Honestly, just came away even more impressed with Texas. I think a lot of the talking points coming to this game was, obviously Michigan having to replace so many, players from a championship winning team. Obviously, we know what kind of experience Texas has coming back. But it's like, well, how is Texas going to kind of match that physicality? If they get into a rock fight with Michigan, how are they going to hold up? And they held up extremely well. Like, this is an extremely physical Texas team. I think when you think of a Steve Sarkisian team, obviously you think offensively, being able to throw the ball down the field, being extremely balanced, but they don't really get enough credit for how physical they are. I mean, this is a team that can match up physically with anybody in the country. It's impressive how he's built this roster. I mean, this is early returns, kind of what a lot of people expected. This is a team that is going to be right in the thick of the national title race, the SEC title race. Just a really, really well-rounded team. And I think you saw that on display against Michigan. I mean, Quinn Ewers, you can tell this third year in the system how well he's playing. He knows exactly where to go with the football. He's just so poised, so in command of the entire offense. They got some really great weapons. They've definitely hit on some of these transfer portal guys, Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden. They're just really, really well rounded. They've had some younger running backs step up with C.J. Baxter being out for the season. So just all in all, I was just really impressed with Texas and especially on the defensive side of the ball. I know Michigan struggled offensively, with some young quarterbacks certainly, but they really were able to control things on the line of scrimmage, which even with the Michigan team that's replacing a lot, it's still impressive because we know they're a physical team. Like that's how that's how their bread's buttered there. So, yeah, just overall, just really impressed with Texas' performance at Michigan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they dominated in all facets. Um, a big question everybody had coming into this season was how was their defensive line going to look? How was their defensive front going to look? I mean, they held Michigan under 100 yards rushing. They had a forced fumble. They had two interceptions on the defense. So I think their defense is quite all right. Now, granted, Michigan's not they're definitely not the number 10 team. They were definitely overrated going into the season, overrated going into this week. Nobody truly believes they're a top 10 team with all they lost. But, with that being said, they were number 10 this week, and Texas definitely put it on them. But they dominated time of possession. I mean, they dominated. They had no turnovers. Texas forced three turnovers, and they didn't have a single turnover. Quinn Ewers threw for damn near 400 yards. Or excuse me, they had damn near 400 yards total offense. He threw for 250 yards, just shy of. They ran for 143 yards. So, I mean, they dominated all facets of the game. Even from the first drive, really, you could tell they were gonna, they were doing what they wanted to do. They were in sync on the offense, even though they had a touchdown. They got called back for a penalty, and they ended up missing a field goal. But I mean, you can tell the ball's bouncing your way. When Quinn Ewers throws a pass, it gets deflected, and it still hits the tight end in stride. Gunner or Help, what's his last name?
Yeah, Gunnar Helm. Yeah, he's
Helm.
he's a really good
Dude,
player.
what everybody remembers Brock Bowers being, he's not as good as Brock Bowers, but he is the Brock Bowers of Texas football for sure. I mean, Quinn Ewers went to him. It seemed like every time he dropped back. He was wide open. He was there, made a lot of plays. I like their aggressiveness on third down. They may have gotten every single third down that they went for. I could be wrong on that. Maybe missed two. I think they only punted three times. Um, but their third down was their aggressiveness on their run games and some of the plays they called. I like it. They were ready to hit you in the mouth. They ran the ball extremely well. Losing a running back a few weeks ago, you got a freshman that you're relying on now, and they stepped up to the task, man. They played extremely well. Quinn Ewers, like you said, made a lot of good decisions. Knows the offense in and out. Knows how to lead that team. There was multiple times. I mean, you can go back and just watch the highlight version and see this, but there was multiple times when he would get pressure and he would roll out and he would try to extend the play, but then he'd see nothing was there and he'd just dump it out, get it away. He'd throw it at the feet of a receiver. He'd throw it out of bounds. And it was like a lot of other quarterbacks you're seeing in college football today are trying to force that back across the field or trying to force that to a receiver in a double coverage, and it makes a bad mistake. And he knows this down is not going to kill me. I'm not going to live and die by this down. So what? We'll go to the next. We'll take three. We'll even punt it if we got to, because punting it and giving the ball back is better than giving up an interception, getting the momentum turn, or potentially a pick six or something along those lines, or killing a drive when you could potentially come away with three. So he's just the things that older quarterback is supposed to be doing. He does it to a T. I mean, like you said, he is. There's no questions about him. As long as he can stay healthy, Texas is probably going to be there at the end of the year. Sarkisian's doing a great job, but I think you're right. They definitely took it to Michigan. What Michigan was so used to doing the last few years under Jim Harbaugh, just taking it to people, running it down their throats, and just establishing their brand of football. Texas did that to Michigan this week. Michigan got a taste of their own medicine of what they try to do. Texas ran it down their throat, established the run game, told them, basically stop it if you can. And they weren't able to. And then Quinn Ewers would pull it in RPO and just make them look silly. I mean, they did what they were expected to do. Michigan, obviously frauds. We've been saying that. Now it's for sure. Because this Texas is going to be a final team. They might not be in the natty, anything can happen, but they're going to be a Final Four team for sure, in my opinion. So if you want to hang with the big dogs, you got to prove it. And I know it's early. Anything can happen from week 2 to week 12, but Texas dominated. They proved that they were for real, and Michigan is definitely a fraud.
Yeah, obviously, like I said, there's no predicting, what's going to happen when the playoffs roll around. But this is definitely a team that's going to be in the mix. There's no doubt in my mind. Just a well-rounded football team. Like I said, with Quinn Ewers leading the way, you made a good point too. I think it was 3rd and goal, probably what you were referencing. He rolls out to the right, getting near the boundary, and he just fires it at the feet of the receiver. Extended it as long as he could, sure. But in his mind, he's knowing like I got 3 in my back pocket. I'm not going to force it. Try to
live to the next drive.
Make a play that's not really there. I think that's the main thing. And, he's got.
We saw a lot of that from Bo Nix when he was at Auburn. We've seen some of that from Peyton Thorne for sure. I think Brady Cook's really good about not doing it too. He's really good about, living to the next play, living to the next drive. He's really good about doing that. I think Stetson Bennett was one of the best to do that. We saw him do it a lot. He was great at extending plays and would try his longest, but if it wasn't there, he would dump it. The really successful quarterbacks understand, the little things, and that the quarterbacks are just good and okay. They don't really seem to understand when the lights turn on. They may get it in practice and they may get it, understand it when they're watching film, but when the lights turn on, they try to force things and can't have that. And definitely, I thought Michigan's quarterback did that. He threw for 200-something yards. He didn't have a bad day, but a lot of his were balls heaved up that his receivers were making some good plays on. There was one play in particular I remember seeing. They had a hot blitz. I believe it was a safety, went in untouched. Soon as he let the ball go, safety hit him. Ball just swirls up. He threw it. He knew where his receiver was going to be, but he just threw it up. Receiver was able to come down, make a good play. He did that a couple of times early in the second quarter. Michigan was just able to make some plays, but Texas was able to disrupt the quarterback. Their defenses, which was what all the chatter was about with questions surrounding this Texas team this year, was their defensive front and how their defense was going to respond and how they were going to be this year, losing a lot of their talent to the NFL. And if this is a case of how they're going to play the rest of the year, I think they're going to be just fine.
Oh yeah, I agree 100%. I think it's a good point too. With this Michigan team, you saw Davis Warren, obviously a younger quarterback, but I think in this type of game when you're down two, you kind of have to make something happen. With Quinn Ewers is such a good situation to where he knows he's got great talent around him. He just needs to do his part. He doesn't have to do anything crazy or anything like that. But if he just makes the right reads, protect the football. Obviously he's super accurate with it on time in this system. But I think he knows that, especially at this point in his career, like, hey, I don't have to do too much. I don't have to necessarily create something that's not there. If it's not there, play the next play because we got the athletes that can go out and make plays and get yards after catch for me, and got a good offensive line, and in my opinion, the best play caller in America. So, um, I think he just does a good job of playing within himself, and I think that comes with age, obviously, and time in the system. You've seen that develop over the last 2 or 3 years, and just really impressed with them. I think they're going to be able to continue this going forward. But yeah, it was a great sign, a great performance, and I think they're going to continue to just build on this.
Absolutely. And I texted you on Saturday, Friday or Saturday, I can't remember which day it was, and I told you I got Arkansas plus 9.5, or no, I had them plus 7.5.
Yeah.
The line ended up closing at 9.5, I believe, on Saturday, but I took them. It might have been Thursday I took them, but I had them at plus 7.5. I just had a good feeling. I'm like, man, they're going to play them well. Oklahoma State's one of those teams that plays down to competition. I mean, they lost to South Alabama last year at home. So I feel like Arkansas is going to come out. They're rejuvenated this year. They're going to try to punch them in the mouth, and by God, they did. I mean, up 21-7 at halftime. Gave them a touchdown with a pick six that really obviously came back to bite them in the end. But I thought Arkansas played out of their minds. Really, turnovers is what hurt them. Self-inflicted wounds is what ended up hurting them in the second half. Oklahoma State really did make some good adjustments in that, and they were a different football team in the second half for sure. Don't take that away from them. But Arkansas had a bunch of self-inflicted wounds, had some penalties that stalled drives and killed drives. All in all, I was very pleased with how Arkansas played. I thought they were going to keep it within the number, and man, went to two overtimes. They almost had it, but I thought they were going to keep it within the number. But man, they played out of their minds. Hats off to Sam Pittman and what he's doing. But it just bites. And I know that the Arkansas fans are saying, yeah, they played good. Yeah, they hung with them. They weren't supposed to be there, yada, yada, yada. This is what his now 10th or 11th single possession loss in the last 3 years. He is right there so many times. This is just another time where he couldn't find a way to finish. And it's not nothing against him. He's playing a good team. It's just that hurts so bad as a fan. I know it does, to be that close so many times, not just to any team, but to so many good teams, ranked teams that are there at the end of the year, and you're just one possession short. And you went to two overtimes with this team on the road, and you fall one possession short again under Sam Pittman. I really hate it for him. He's one of my favorite coaches in the SEC. But, man, what was your takeaways from this? I really liked how they played. Nothing but respect for Arkansas, but I know that it bites, man, being an Arkansas fan, seeing this, having this happen again.
Yeah, 100%. The first thing I want to point out is how rarely do you see a team lose by 8 in overtime? I feel like that's hardly ever happened. I don't have a stat on that necessarily, but I can't really recall the last time I remember seeing somebody get beat by 8 in overtime. So that's what made the losing that line hurt so much more. It's like when you got to overtime, you're like, hey, whatever happens, I got it. I got 7.5. Well, no, you needed 8.5. Unfortunately, that was kind of my first thing. I was like, man. But I go back.
Well, my thought was don't go to the third overtime, because if it goes to triple overtime, then they have to go for 2. I was just like, don't go to the third overtime and we're good. And then I saw them going for 2, and I was like, no, and they got it. No,
just it was crazy. Crazy game. Looking back at the stat sheet though, you just have to ask yourself, like, how in the world did they lose this game? They outgained Oklahoma State 648 to 385. They outrushed them 232 to 59. Obviously, the turnovers, especially in the second half, were big. The pick six, you had a couple missed field goals, one in regulation, one in overtime. Obviously, you had the muff punt. So I mean, it was a bunch of self-inflicted wounds for sure. But all in all, I really did like what I saw from Arkansas, though. Um, like you said, though, it's just kind of a common theme. You got to be able to finish some of these games, and obviously some of the losses are understandable. You're playing against really good teams, and as you mentioned, losing to some really elite teams that are there at the end of the season. But at the same time, when it kind of keeps happening over and over in a game that you were in control of for most of,
Time of possession,
dominated the stat sheet stuff.
Arkansas had 36 minutes and 14 seconds time of possession. Oklahoma State, 23 minutes, 46 seconds. So they had 12 minutes or 13 minutes more time possession and lost this game.
Yeah, I mean, I look at Jaquindon Jackson. If you would have told yourself coming into the game, he'd have 24 carries, 149 yards. On the
3
other
touchdowns.
sideline for Oklahoma State, one of the best running backs in the country, Ollie Gordon, got held 17 carries for 49 yards. Like if you tell yourself some of these stats before the game, you're like, oh yeah, Arkansas comes in there and wins this game. Yeah, but like I said, it was a couple, like I said, the interception over the middle obviously was a pick six. Then the muff punt obviously gave them great field position. A couple missed kicks in there as well. Turnover on downs deep in your own territory one time. So, yeah, just a couple things that obviously snowballed into getting this game to overtime. Then all bets are off. They weren't able to get it done. They both missed kicks in the first overtime, and then obviously Oklahoma State was able to punch it in. And I thought it was interesting too. That last play, Taylor Green hands off to Jaquindon Jackson. But that end was that defensive end was crashing in. Like if he'd have kept it, he probably would have walked in. Obviously, still would have had to get the 2-point conversion, but at least would have got us a cover there.
Yeah.
But yeah, all in all, a good game. A lot of good takeaways from Arkansas. Obviously, there's a pretty good football team. Within that performance. But at the same time, it's just something they got to learn from and hopefully be able to kind of correct those woes going forward. And because they have some winnable games coming up. Obviously, a really tough schedule as usual. But there's some games coming up that if they play to this level and be able to close it in the end, there's some games on their schedule they can win and be able to kind of surprise some people going forward.
Absolutely. And I dreadfully want to go down to the Plains and cover this monstrosity that happened on Saturday. The Cal Golden Bears come into Jordan-Hare Stadium, and they take care of business, honestly. And they tried to let Auburn win the game. They tried to let us hang around and stay in it. And Auburn just kept giving it right back to them. At one point in this game, in the second half, Auburn's defense had 6 straight stops. 6 straight stops, giving up no points. And Auburn's offense couldn't come away with anything. Auburn got bailed out to finally get to 14. They got bailed out on a targeting penalty that was a phantom targeting penalty. Got bailed out. Threw 4 interceptions, really threw 5. The one that was called back because of pass interference or defensive pass interference was not defensive pass interference. The officiating this game was horrendous on both sides. Auburn defensively tackled really poorly in the first half, but made a lot of adjustments in the second half. And like I said, played really well in the second half, had 6 straight stops. The offense, man, obviously everybody's talking about Peyton Thorne and all the interceptions and things along those lines. Yes, horrible, absolutely atrocious. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'll get there, I promise. We got a long trail to wind before we get to that bridge, though. The offensive line, man, since 2014 has not been competitive for one season in 2017, but they had to build to get there. Not saying it can't happen, but my God, the same thing over and over. Different names, different numbers, same bullshit. It is fascinating how they can go and get guys from the portal here and there. They can get the big recruits from high school, and then they get there and they can't develop them or these guys don't know what the hell is going on because it's consistently the offensive line is the biggest downfall of Auburn's offense. Yes, you can talk about the receivers and the pass. You can talk about the quarterback play, yada, yada, yada. The offensive line is the biggest downfall. It's the biggest weakness. It's the biggest, weakest link, and that's what's been dragging Auburn down for quite some time. They have got to get that figured out. It's a long season. I'm not acting like they're going to be this way the rest of the season. They're going to get better. I understand that, but they've got to fix something there drastically. My second biggest complaint, we just abandoned the run game. Excuse me, Auburn. I'm trying to be unbiased here. Auburn just abandoned the run game, completely abandoned it. First half, I believe Jarquez had 4 carries, maybe 5. I understand a lot of it's RPO, so it's whatever Peyton's seeing to whatever, if he's giving it or keeping it. I understand all that. But you got to have some more just designed handoffs for him. You got one of the best backs in college football in your backfield. You got a stable of them that are really good, but you got one of the best backs leading it. Hand him the football. In the second half, he comes out, and they start giving it to him, and he's getting 5-6 yards a pop, broke off a 20-something yard run, and then they just go away from it completely. And then Peyton Thorne threw 4 interceptions. 2 of them, I'll say, not your fault. One of them got tipped, Cam Coleman. It was a little high. Cam Coleman should have caught the ball. Got tipped, interception. Okay, whatever. Another one, offensive line definitely broke down. Pressure got through, which happened all day, but pressure got through. I feel like Peyton held on to the ball a little bit too long, but he got hit as soon as he threw it. Ball kind of goes up a little high. Another pick. The other 2, though, and the third one that got called back for a penalty, I mean, uncalled for. Can't have that happen. Got to have the situational awareness, especially at the end of the game, to understand that you're the go-to receiver. Hanging, his arm's hanging. He's asking for a sub. I get it. We're trying to go quick. You can't really get him in, whatever. You got the headsets. Tell him you can't go to him, or just have the situational awareness to understand what's happening. I know we can't see everything, but my God, understand you can't throw it to him. But also, and I know it's a lot faster when he's playing, but he snapped the ball and he looked at Cam Coleman the whole time the last play, and he had 2 guys. There's a still frame of it. He had 2 guys wide open on the other side of the field. But you saw your read and you went to it. That is freshman year stuff. That is a true freshman quarterback type stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, reminded me a lot of Bo Nix as his freshman year of what he would do. Seth Williams, he would just lock on him and throw it. It reminded me a lot of that. I'm like, this is a 5th-year guy. This guy has played a lot of college football, and he is making freshman mistakes, sophomore mistakes. It is like, at some point, something's got to give. Now, I understand Hugh Freeze is putting him out there because he honestly feels like he's the best quarterback on the roster, and he may be. And in practice, Hugh Freeze said today in his press conference, he said, I find it hard to bench a guy that is consistently the best performer in practice, that is consistently the most prepared, that is the best leader of the group. He's like, basically saying he does not do this in practice. He is spot on in practice, running this offense to a T, looks like we need him to look. But then when he did say, but that's got to, at some point, that's got to transition to the game field. Obviously. Now, you can expect to see Hank Brown getting some reps with the ones in practice this week. You're probably going to see him run a drive or 2 against New Mexico this week. I think the competition is wide open. I understand that he may be performing better in practice. Here's my thing. People are saying, people that are against him getting benched are saying, if there was a better option on the roster, they would be playing him. I hear you. I get you. But they're acting like the backups are me, who played 1 year of high school football at the receiver position. They're acting like that's the backup option at quarterback. Or they're acting like it's some no-name they just pulled off campus because they needed to fill a roster spot. These guys are running the offense. They know the playbook. They're in team meetings. They understand they can run it. It's not like we got some scrubs back there. They're not all Americans, but they are capable enough to run the offense. I promise you, they can go out there and throw 4 picks too. They can do. That's what's so frustrating as an Auburn fan. It's because nobody is saying that there's more talent behind Peyton Thorne, that Hank Brown is better. Put him in. He's more talented. No, but we want to see at least what he can do when the lights are on, because we know for a fact that he can throw four interceptions. That's the frustrating part. And so, yeah, I'm on my soapbox. Hats off to Cal. Hats off to Cal's defense. Auburn's offense was out of sync all game, and that was in part to Auburn obviously just being discombobulated, but that was in part a big part of Cal's defense. I mean, they were where they were supposed to be. They played assignment football to a T. They had pressure on the quarterback all game. They had pressure when they brought blitz. They had pressure when they didn't bring a blitz. I mean, their defensive front was getting after it. And then Mendoza, their quarterback, he played a well of a game, was extremely poised. Wasn't really a threat running, but when the pocket broke and the play broke down, he would run, and he got a couple of first downs on some third down conversions that he got, some 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s that he converted running the ball. Very frustrating. But he was a damn good quarterback. Took what Auburn gave him. And then in the second half, they figured him out a little bit and started playing a lot better defense, but he still managed the storm, weathered the storm, and was able to get him in the end zone one more time. Frustrating game for sure. Frustrating game as an Auburn fan. They got to get better, obviously. Hugh Freeze got to figure something out. Gotta stop losing the games that you're supposed to win, especially at home. I understand Cal's a much better team than last year. Auburn's a much better team than last year, roster-wise, when you're talking. Is what I'm talking about. Cal went through the portal, got a lot of guys, plugged some places, got some bigger guys in there, better guys in there. Auburn did the same thing though. Went through there's some younger guys on that talent, but they got some guys that are supposed to be sure enough guys through the portal. They're not playing as well as they should be. Keontae Scott ended up getting benched on Saturday because he got cooked. I mean, they targeted him 5 times. The guys had 5 receptions. Ridiculous. Ended up cannot think of his name. Guy that transferred from Alabama. Can't think of his name. Put him in.
Antonio Kite.
Kite. Put him in. He played extremely well from there on. He did get cooked early in the game, though, but he played well when he took over at where Keontae Scott was. But just an extremely frustrating game. My biggest things is, man, the offensive line, got to shore that up. It's been the same old story for the last 10 years. And then the run game, man, just completely abandoned it. I understand it's RPO system, but you got to have some design handoffs to Jarquez. You got to. It is ridiculous that wasn't a thing, especially when they got hot there in the second quarter or in the second half. I mean, I got to hear out a fans or an outsider's perspective, not a fan's, because I'm obviously seeing this through blue and orange glasses and blue and orange lenses. I feel like I'm pretty unbiased. Like, I understand Cal just whipped us. It wasn't just Auburn definitely lost the game at points, but Cal also whipped them for sure. I mean, the two can be true. Auburn definitely had plenty of chances to win this game and just wouldn't take advantage of it. Had a pick 6, dropped a pick 6. Got to be better on defense on that part. But still, for sure, Cal tried to give Auburn the game. Auburn lost it, but Cal also won it.
Yeah, I mean, kind of looking at a big picture perspective, I think obviously it was a bad day for Peyton Thorne. I mean, there's no getting around that. Obviously, he's kind of the punching bag from this performance. And like I said, a lot of it is definitely warranted, no doubt. Obviously, a lot of protection breakdowns was a big thing. The offensive line was just not good at all. And I think, there's been a lot of debate about this, people saying, hey, Hugh Freeze should have went out, got a portal quarterback. And obviously he chose not to do that. There's, you can debate whether that was right or wrong. But I think you saw parts of this roster are still have a long way to go. And I think you kind of see why he didn't do that, because they're more than just a quarterback away. I think they obviously had the resources to be able to go get one of the big portal quarterbacks, but I think they realize, hey, let's just kind of, it's almost like in the NFL. It's like we're not there yet to really push our chips to the middle of the table, so to speak. So it's like this is an incomplete roster, and I think it's been underestimated a little bit, and even probably by myself, of how far off this roster really was. And you know what I mean? And I think, obviously, it's a better roster than a year ago, no doubt. But I think, too, they're obviously having to rely on a lot of younger players. And you're going to get some ups and downs when you're relying on younger guys, too, pretty heavily. I think Alabama's going to see some of that this year in their secondary and several spots on their roster that are inexperienced. So I think you're going to have some variation in performance when you're kind of, not only is your roster not where it needs to be yet, but you're also relying on some of those younger guys. So there's going to be some lumps too. But I think a lot of people have maybe underestimated just how far off it was. I know a lot realize it. obviously, but this is a multi-year process to really get it back and get that foundation laid to where it needs to be. I do agree with you. You know, they they have to stop losing it, especially at home to teams that they're better than. I mean that they even with the roster as is, everyone agrees they should beat Cal at home. Obviously, shouldn't have lost to New Mexico State at home last year. So I mean, there's a couple times where they still have to be better regardless of where the roster is. Um, but yeah, I just think a big picture scenario is it's just patient. There's just got to be patience because it's going to take longer, and there's some fixes that are just not going to be fixed this year because it's just not
Right.
there yet. Obviously, they can be better, and I believe they will be. I think it's very likely they end up beat. They're going to beat somebody that probably you would not expect them to, especially
They
after
always
this
do. They
loss.
always do.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. They're going to end up beating somebody that's kind of a surprise a little bit. I think that's just going to be par for the course this year. I do think looking forward though, I don't think the future quarterback is on this roster. I absolutely think with another recruiting class, I do think they go get that portal quarterback next year. Not to disrespect Hank Brown or Walker White or Holden and all them, but I do think I think next year's quarterback's not on the roster yet. I think you'll see more aggression on that front a year from now because they're going to be in a much better position roster wise. Still going to be young though in a lot of spots, so it's not necessarily going to be complete yet. But it's a multi-year process. I mean, it really is. I think, as I said, I think people maybe underestimated how far they've been set back. By Brian Harson and the way they recruited for a couple of years there. You just can't make it up overnight, and you can't make it up in one cycle. It takes time. It sucks when you're in it because it's like, man, I got another year burned, like another, it's just like, but this stuff takes time, man. The portal obviously can speed it up, but even then, it still takes time to build that foundation. But I just think it's going to be that year where the roster is. There's going to be some downs and there's going to be some ups a little bit where you maybe beat somebody you should. I think you even saw that last year a little bit. The way they
Yeah.
played Georgia and Alabama, even though they didn't win, they played so much better those weeks, and then they lost to New Mexico State. It's just that variance of performance that is kind of going to be there until the roster keeps getting in a better position.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, but there were plenty of opportunities for Peyton to make plays.
Yep.
I don't know I don't know if you've seen Aaron Murray's breakdown of it on
I was
Twitter.
going to mention that. Watched it today, actually.
Absolutely fantastic. And he's not, don't, if you're not, haven't seen it yet, don't think, oh, he's bashing because he used to play at Georgia. He is absolutely just being an analyst and breaking down, really gives really, really good insight
Yeah, really enjoy
to a fan perspective. Yeah, he gives a really, really good job. And there's multiple plays where Peyton held on to the ball extremely too long. Had a guy open, should have thrown the ball 2 to 3 seconds before he did or before he got sacked. Had a guy for a 15, 20-yard game multiple times. I remember one of his picks, he had Dre Lambert-Smith wide open on a slant route, wide open, and went over the top and ended up throwing a pick. I'm like, there's just certain things yes, he had pressure on him all game. He did not have a great protection at all. He was scrambling a lot, trying to extend plays, but there were multiple opportunities that could have extended drives, that could have ended in points, and could have halted Auburn to a win. Still have been an ugly game, but got the job done. That he did not take advantage of, and I think that's the most frustrating part because he is a fifth-year guy. It's like there's no more excuses for you now. Like what's going on? That's the frustrating part is because yes, it's not always there because the line is the biggest problem. The line is the biggest problem. Let's not push that to a side at all. The line is the biggest problem, but that. When the line does hold up and the play is there and you have the opportunity to take advantage of it and you don't, that's when people get frustrated because it's like the backup can do that. You're making backup decisions is what you're doing. You're out there playing like you're a backup, and that's so whatever. I'm I'm tired of hearing about this. Everybody else, I'm sure, is tired of hearing about this because it's been all over sports media. I don't want to talk about it anymore. On to the next. Hopefully, we can take on the Lobos. It's not New Mexico State, so maybe they have a chance. But moving on to another team that really frustrated me this weekend because I had some coin on there. I know
Hey, man,
Cam
I
had
was
some
gonna
coin
say,
on there too. But good for the other side because I'm a big Beamer fan. South Carolina dominates Kentucky. The biggest takeaway from me, the all game watching it, Kentucky's defense horrible at tackling. Absolutely cannot tackle. And they can't cover. There was multiple big plays that South Carolina had that was just busted coverages. 2 touchdowns they had busted coverages. Had a couple of second and third down conversions over the middle, busted coverages. I mean, not a DB within 10 yards of these receivers. So I don't know what's up with Kentucky's defense, but they struggled tackling on Saturday and they struggled covering on Saturday. Other than that, there's really not much takeaway. South Carolina, Nick Emanwari, I mean, we talked about him for forever. Talked about him earlier in the preseason preview. We've talked about him for years now. Made a great defensive play later in the game. Got a pick six, kind of pretty much sealed it there, or later in the first half, excuse me. So it was all South Carolina all game long. They imposed their will, both defensively and offensively. Vandergrift, man, I feel sorry for him. He don't have a whole lot of protection there in the backfield. Him and Dane Key hooked up for a couple of big plays. But other than that, man, Kentucky really doesn't have much to talk about. I was very high on them. I bought into it, and it bit me in the rear because man, they let me down.
man, I was saying I was disappointed in Kentucky is a tremendous understatement. This was an absolute, as Mark Stoops said, an absolute embarrassing performance. He actually said that during the game because they went over there and interviewed him. It was
Yep.
absolutely embarrassing how easily South Carolina got pressure. You said they couldn't tackle, they couldn't block either, man.
Yeah.
It was there was times where South Carolina got home with 3-man rushes, 4-man rushes against 6 or 7 in protection. I mean, it was like, what is going on? Obviously, we mentioned this last week. Folks, if you don't know Dylan Stewart yet, you're going to very soon. This guy is an absolute beast, man.
Dude had a sack by off the ground, dove over his blocker and sacked the court, strip sack.
Yeah, this guy has got to be one of the quickest guys I've ever seen come off the edge, dude. He is like a lightning bolt. I mean, it is ridiculous. All
The
I
guy
can
who
say
makes
is,
everyone forget who Jadeveon Clowney is.
yeah, forget Melvin Ingram, all those guys. Dylan Stewart's the new guy on the block. And all I can say, South Carolina is, I don't know how long you're going to have him. Hopefully it's 3 years. Absolute. But all I'm saying is go ahead and get your NIL war chest ready because there is absolutely going to be some tampering. Well, I say after the season, probably during the season if it hasn't already happened. So get your ducks in a row, get your hundreds in order, because Dylan Stewart is going to be due a pay raise here sooner rather than later. So
I was thinking that today
in
they were
Columbia,
talking about him on the radio, and I was driving down the road and I heard they were talking about Dylan Stewart, and I'm just thinking to myself, it's really gonna suck seeing him in a Georgia uniform next year. That's the only
yeah,
thing that
or
would
a
go through my
Buckeye
head was
uniform.
he's not gonna stay at South Carolina. He's not wasting his talent. He's going to get a ring somewhere.
Yeah, but I hope that I hope that's not the case. Obviously, I hope it's 3 years in Columbia. Maybe it is. Who knows? If they keep playing like they're playing, maybe there's a good chance
Yeah.
he stays there. Obviously, that's a conversation for another time. But right now, he's absolutely wreaking havoc in the backfield, as did the entire Gamecock front against this putrid, pathetic Kentucky offensive line. That was an absolute terrible display. And I can honestly say, how do you lose 31-6? Kentucky completed 6 passes. How are you down that much? You can't complete more than 6 passes. I mean, it was Brock Vandegrift 3 of 10 for 30 yards and a pick. Gavin Wimsatt came in. He went 3 of 7, and then he had a pick as well. So yeah, terrible day for Kentucky quarterbacks. Pretty much obviously bad day across the board. Yeah, obviously I was surprised South Carolina dominated the way they won this game, but in the manner in which they did it against Kentucky, um, honestly, you got to wonder too. Obviously, Mark Stoops really close to getting the A&M job. Wanted the A&M job bad. Obviously, didn't get it at the last minute.
A&M
But
fans
you
did
almost
not
got to wonder,
reciprocate
does
that
that
feeling.
have something to do with this? Because that team just looked uninterested, unprepared. It was surprising. I did not expect this result at all.
Are you insinuating that Mark Stoops might be done with Kentucky after this year? Is that what we're insinuating right here on Saturdays in the SEC?
All I know
After
is
week two?
all I know is he flirted with another girl. He got slammed in the door in his face at the last minute, and his team looked very uninspired. I don't know, may have nothing to do with it. I don't know, but it's
I
like
like it. I
it
like
is
it.
just. To let South Carolina come into Kroger Field and drag you up and down the field. South Carolina, obviously, they're a solid team, no doubt about it. If you're Kentucky with what you have, Mark Stoops has been there as long as he said, it's unacceptable and it's embarrassing. And I lit a $20 bill on fire. There's nothing else I can say. Absolutely, I would have might as well just lit it with a match and thrown it in the chimney. It was an absolute waste of money. Not only did I take Kentucky to win, I took the points, brother. I took the points
Me
minus nine and
too.
a half.
Me too.
Absolutely embarrassing. But we'll see if they regroup. I don't know. It's a tough one. That's going to be a tough pill to swallow. There's no doubt about it. But I tell you what, we got an interesting one in Columbia, South Carolina this week with LSU coming to town. That game got a lot more interesting after
Yes,
this
it did.
one.
Yes, it did. Okay, but we'll get into it now. But early prediction for that game.
Man, I tell you, I know that environment's going to be off the chain.
Rocket.
Yeah, game day's coming there for the first time in 5 years or so. 5 or 6. It's been quite a while. Um, Probably, if not one of the most underrated environments in the country. I think they're absolutely going to be ready for this game.
Georgia's lost there.
It's such a tough call. Obviously, with LSU, I think I love them offensively. A little bit of a struggle this week with Nichols State. I don't know. My mind's telling me LSU in a close one, but my gut man's tell me Williams-Brice is going to pull South Carolina through. I don't know. I'm really torn on that game. Honestly, that's why I'm fascinated to see it. I just want to see how quickly does South Carolina turn the page. Obviously it was a huge win, a dominant win. How quickly can they turn the page to get ready for a big time opponent coming in this week? Because LSU's easily a top 15 team in my mind. So um, their defensive front's going to have to get after it again against a good LSU offensive line because Garrett Nussmeier's a big time quarterback.
Yeah, you gotta let last week fuel you in the right way. You can't look at it and say, "Oh, we're good, we're fine, we ain't got to worry about it. We're gonna be that good." No, you got to say, "Okay, we're that good now. How much better can we be next week? We're better than that. Then how much better can we be?" That's you gotta let it fuel you the right way. But before we get into breaking down next week's games, there's one last game I want to get into. Actually, there's two of them, but one of them I want to spend the most time on. Man, at the beginning of the year, we did our preseason breakdowns and rankings of what we thought they would end at, and I had Tennessee at 4. I think I was wrong. I think they're going to be a top 3 team. Man, this Tennessee team, they're going to upset some people this year. They're going to ruffle some feathers, and I think they're going to be there in the final 12. That offense, man, playing lights out. Nico not missing a beat. I think he's got that offense perfectly. understood. He's leading it extremely well through 2 weeks. Played a really good NC State team. This is no slouch team they're playing. I mean, this is a really good NC State football team, but defensively is what I was the most proud of, man, because we know Josh Heupel. We know he's been there long enough now. Their offense, that's their bread and butter. That's what they're going to be good at. You can guarantee they're going to put up points and line up the scoreboard and move it up and down the field at a very quick margin. You can guarantee that's going to happen under Josh Heupel. But their defense has been what people have been questioning and what people have been frustrated about since he's been there. I don't think they're frustrated right now. This defense, man, played out of their minds. Giving up 10 points. I mean, I was shocked. I knew their defense was decent. I knew they were going to be a good team. But giving up 10 points, I mean, held them to 104 passing yards. Didn't have an interception, and they only ran the ball for 39 yards. So you held them to 143 total yards all game. That is a recipe for a lot of wins coming up this season for Tennessee. Offensively, moved it up and down the field, ran the ball at will, threw the ball at will, did whatever they wanted. But defensively, man, they were a brick wall.
Yeah. I mean, that was definitely the most impressive. I mean, and honestly, obviously a good offensive night, scoring 51. But honestly, on a scale of 0 to 100, I give their offense about a 75. Like, this wasn't even their best. Like, I mean, this was a good offensive performance, but I think Josh Heupel would say the exact same thing. Like, I think there's more room to grow here. Like, this wasn't even the best that they have yet.
The 2 picks,
Nico,
that doesn't help.
Yeah, Nico gave up the 1 pick-6 late in the game where his arm got hit. There was some pressure. I mean, obviously Tennessee didn't even give up an offensive touchdown. He did throw 1 pick where it was just a bad throw. He just sailed it a little bit. But all in all, he's extremely in command. I'm really impressed with Dylan Sampson. I mean, that's the running back for Tennessee. Had an absolutely awesome night. And when people think about Tennessee, obviously the first thing that comes to mind is vertical passing game, throwing the ball down the field. Like, this is one of the most balanced teams in the country. Like, this team wants to run the ball and is going to run the ball. And the way they play, yeah, and the way that their offensive system is, we've talked a lot about how far they line the receivers up to the boundary, which makes you lighten your box on defense. Like, it's set up for them to be able to run it effectively, and they're very, very good at doing that. So, yeah, I think as Nico continues to get more comfortable, this offense is going to continue to develop and get better and better. And they haven't even reached their ceiling yet as far as that goes. They haven't had their A-plus performance yet necessarily. But like you said, the real storyline to me from this game is just how dominant they were defensively. I mean, if they're playing really good defense, and I think you're continuing to see this program develop and be on the rise, and obviously known as an offensive team, but you're seeing them being able to develop their program on the opposite side of the ball, and honestly, they're able to play a really complementary style of football. I mean, it's a really complementary game. Obviously, I know they haven't played the toughest schedule yet. We don't know exactly what NC State is, but as you mentioned, a really quality team at the end of the day, and they absolutely dismantled them. So just really impressed with Tennessee, defensively especially, but offensively, I know they're going to continue to take steps forward, and as Nico gets more comfortable, they're going to get better and better. So I agree with you. I think this Tennessee team may even be better than we thought, and we knew they would be a good team coming in this year. Just want to continue to see how that develops. And I know, obviously, that's how college football is. Sometimes you see teams early on, they may not be as good as you think. And then sometimes it may be they're even better than you think. I think the good thing is we're going to find out pretty quickly. Obviously, with the schedule this year, Tennessee has a pretty tough one, as everyone does in the SEC. So the good thing is you don't have to wait long to find out what somebody really is. Yeah. So I think that's the good thing is we're going to find out, here soon exactly how good they are and how good they can be. But yeah, early returns are looking, better than expected, I think. And even then, it was really good heading in the season. But yeah, they look great through 2 weeks.
Yeah, Josh Heupel is everything Auburn fans wanted Gus Malzahn to be. Taking over a team and a program when it's at the lowest point hasn't been really great, and building it into what Josh Heupel's built it into. Gus Malzahn took over the program at his lowest point ever. Couldn't quite get it to where Josh Heupel's got it now. Josh Heupel took the program over, especially at a low point, had NCAA violations going on, and took it over and rebuilt that team to where it is now. And speaking of rebuilding teams and getting handed a program pretty much at their lowest point, want to go out to the West Coast where an SEC team took on a West Coast team this weekend. It was a little Pac-12 after dark, or what used to be Pac-12 after dark. Arizona State host the Mississippi State Bulldogs, and Jeff Lebby's taking over Mississippi State at their lowest point probably in program history. A lot of bad things have been going on down there. Not anything with player-wise or program-wise, just a lot of bad luck's been happening. Had a coach pass away and had a defensive coach take over, and then that didn't quite work out, so got him out the door, got another new coach in there. So it's just pretty much a fresh start down there in Mississippi State and Starkville, and they travel out to the West Coast and take on Arizona State. Honestly, these teams are pretty evenly matched. Both of them are not great, kind of, bottom of the barrel in their conference and where they're at right now. Mississippi State played pretty well. They had a lot of fight in them. I mean, came back in the end. They were down, and in the end, they ended up putting together a drive, 2 drives, and scored 2 touchdowns late. Scored 13 late in the fourth quarter to make it a close game. Had a long breakaway run to tie it, or to bring it within one score. Couldn't quite get the job done. Early on, they looked bad defensively. Had a lot of miscues defensively. Figured it out in the second half, and then offensively, they had some things bounce their way in the second half, but showed a lot of fights. It's what you want to see in a first-year program or a first-year coach in the new program. You guys are going to go out there, be scrappy, give it all they got. Clearly, they want to play for Lebby, and he's doing some good things down there. The culture is getting built right, but they got sacked a lot, man. They didn't have great protection. I believe Blake Shapen got sacked 6 or 7 times. They weren't able to run the ball really well. They ran the ball for like 50-something yards. Threw the ball pretty well, 260-something yards. But Arizona State they just dominated, man. They ran the ball extremely well. Their running back, Cam Scatabo, 33 carries for 262. Did not score a touchdown, but ran the ball for 262 yards, and then their other running back, Sam Leavitt. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I'm sorry. He had 11 carries and 2 touchdowns. Time of possession was just absolutely dominated by Arizona State. Arizona State had the ball for 40 minutes compared to Mississippi State's 19 minutes.
Yeah.
Not really a recipe for success if you're only going to have the ball for less than half the time that your opponent does. But yeah, I mean, Arizona State really just controlled the clock, controlled the game with their run game. Really not much Mississippi State could do. Everybody knew Mississippi State's defense was going to be pretty suspect this year. Their offense is flashy, but they really they don't have the guys. They don't have the depth. So it's going to be a work in progress there. But I really like the way they battled, and they weren't in it all game, but they made sure that they were in it there at the end, and they were grinding and competing, and that's really all you can ask.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was a really struggle early in the game. Had a lot of early 3 and outs in the first half. I mean, they were down 27-3 at half. Obviously, like you said, like the way they were able to battle back in the second half. Finally, was able to sustain some drives in the third quarter. Got a couple touchdowns. In the second half, I think 3 touchdown drives in the second half. So, yeah, like you said, it was really just controlled by Arizona State's run game, though. I mean, they outran them 346-24. So, I mean, when you get outrushed at that kind of clip, your defense is constantly on the field. As you mentioned, with time of possession discrepancy, 40-20, basically. It's going to be a tough night. But like I said, I like how they battle back. Defensively, obviously, it's going to be a struggle this year for the most part. But offensively, as you said, they can be flashy, but they're kind of streaky. As kind of shown by the first half and versus the second half. But yeah, like their fight. I mean, obviously there's going to be, growing pains. There's a long way to go roster wise as well. But yeah, a lot like how they fought in the second half. They just couldn't overcome, getting outrushed by 300 yards. I mean, when that's the case, it's gonna be a long night most of the time.
And you can see the vision for his offense. If you want to see, archetype of what his offense is wanting to be like, you would look at Tennessee and you would look at Ole Miss, and it would be a combination of those two offenses. What Jeff Lebby's trying to do down there at Mississippi State doesn't quite have the caliber of player to really dominate that type of offense. He's one that wants to score quick, score a lot, score quick. You got to have a defense to really have that type of offense, because you're going to have time for your offense to stall and they're out there three and out quick before they hit some big plays and figure it out. So you got to have a defense you can rely on, and he just doesn't have that right now. So it's going to take some time down there in Mississippi State. But I think Jeff Lebby's got all the time in the world he wants down there. I think people, the fans, the players, the administration have all bought into what he believes and what he's preaching. So I'm excited to see where they go. But it's going to be a long season for Mississippi State. But I think they have a lot of good things to look forward to.
Yeah, I did want to touch real quick on this Bama USF game before we get into some of the previews for next week. Obviously, it was an absolute struggle for 3 quarters, no doubt about it. You turned the ball over, I believe, 3 times in the second half, or in the third quarter, I believe specifically. So obviously a big time struggle, not too different from what we experienced a year ago down in Tampa. I do want to say, first off, Alex Goish is going to be coaching a high major team sooner rather than later. This is a guy 100% on the rise. I give him a ton of credit. I mean, he had his team ready to go. They were aggressive. This is probably one of the more aggressive defensive fronts I've seen. They just constantly attack, and they put your offensive line in, stressful situations and confusing fronts to who do you need to pick up. And it's definitely a challenge, even for a team that's a group of 5 team in the American Athletic Conference. But all in all, like I said, I've been respecting this team all offseason. I don't know who else. I don't know how everybody else was feeling, but I was respecting the Bulls coming into this game. Didn't think it would be as much of a struggle as it was, certainly, but was glad to see Alabama, pull away in the fourth quarter. Wilkin Formby, really tough night at right tackle. Obviously, a bunch of penalties, gave up some sacks. They really wanted to hold Elijah Pritchett out of this game if they could. Got a little banged up in week 1 as left tackle, filling in for Caden Proctor. They want to keep him at right tackle, obviously, when Proctor's healthy, and go with Proctor, kick Booker back into left guard where he normally plays. He was at left tackle in this game. Then obviously have Brazelford, Roberts, and then Pritchett at right guard, or right tackle, excuse me. That's the 5 they really want. Obviously been some injuries the first couple weeks of the season, so been a lot of shuffling going up there. I think that's part of the reason for some of that, the inconsistency up front. Obviously, it was a bad night, just in general for Wilkin Formby, and got it. I believe DeBoer said in his press conference today they had 180 or 190 yards called back for penalties. Milrose long touchdown run is like a 75-yard run got called back for a holding. I did think a few honestly weren't holdings. Like he got one where the guy just fell to the ground. He got called for a holding. So as you said with the Auburn Cal game, the reffing was terrible in this game. There was a couple pass interference. Ryan Williams absolutely getting mugged, getting just held down the field. Rough night for Ken Williamson and his crew. I hate getting his games, but anyways, a lot to clean up from this game. Thought there were some things Milroe could have done better, but obviously it was a tough situation with the protection being the way it was. Defensively, quarterback run was big for USF. But Alex Goish, really good offensive mind coming from the Heupel tree. Byron Brown's an absolute load at quarterback. I mean, he had a really good night. Bad night throwing. He missed a couple guys open down the field, which was a little concerning too, but not totally to be unexpected when you're playing so many freshmen in the secondary. That's a little bit of a concern, and obviously those guys are going to have to grow up quickly because there's a lot of big tests coming. Um, my take on Alabama this year, at least so far, is I think their starting unit can match up with anybody in the country. I think the margin for error for Alabama isn't as big as for Georgia or for Texas or maybe a couple other teams. I just don't think they have the depth or experience depth at least. Got some really talented young players, but obviously having to rely on so many, especially in one position groups, a tall task. It's not a matter of talent though; it's just getting those guys more experience. Um, but I do think Alabama definitely needs to have good injury luck this year on the offensive line because I don't know how much reliable depth that can come in and contribute the way that they need to. I think that was a big thing you saw Saturday night. So obviously, hopefully on the injury front, they can avoid that and be able to stay relatively healthy in a couple of those spots. But yeah, all in all, a lot to work on, obviously, which you would expect early on. But I do think the offensive line will be in better shape this week going to Wisconsin. I'm interested to see how they play on the road for the first road test of the year.
Yeah, I actually had USF plus 31, so that did hit. The only reason I did that is because if you look back at the Western Kentucky game, Western Kentucky was able to move the ball down the field offensively. They just ended up throwing some picks. TJ Finley was being TJ Finley, so he killed some drives just playing bad quarterback play. So I knew that South Florida was going to be able to drive the ball down the field. I thought some of the play calls were questionable from their coaching staff later in the first half and early in the second half when they got down close to the red zone. But Bama's defense sacked up in the red zone, and they figured out how to stop them when they were in their own territory. So I thought that there was some, like you said, some questionable things on the defensive side that you're wondering, why is that happening? Why are they wide open right there? What's going on here? Why are they able to run the ball extremely well with this guy, certain times? So I think there are more questions going into this game against Wisconsin than there's ever been questions in the last 17 years about Alabama football. There's so much that nobody really knows the answer to, and nobody's really has that confidence of, oh, well, we have Saban, we're going to be okay. This is the first time I think fans actually are not worried, but are feeling like, okay, Bama's got to come out and play their best game this Saturday, or we're in some serious trouble. And I feel like that's the first time this happened in quite some time. Obviously, there's been games in the past where you're like, well, we got to play our best game, blah, blah, but you still feel like, all in all, we're the better team, we're the better roster, we're everything else. And I still think they're obviously the better team and the better roster. But there's some things that you've seen in the last 2 weeks defensively that, to me, makes me scratch my head a little bit going into this Wisconsin game. Being on the road especially. Now, I still think Alabama's going to win. I think that a game like this, you don't have to worry about anybody being locked in, being ready to go, being amped up, ready to play, juiced up, locked in, ready to, they know their assignment. They're keyed in. They're not going to miss assignments. They're not going to play sluggish. You're not going to catch them napping. This is one that players, that they've had circled since the offseason. So I'm not worried about Bama being ready to go and stuff. But the mistakes along the lines of penalties that we've seen the last 4 or 5 seasons that have stacked up to hurt Alabama, and some of the things that I've seen on defense with mid-major teams being able to move the ball at will at sometimes, I think is a big question going into this game. I think that's what makes me say the line's a little too big. I'm not betting this game. I'm going to stay away from this game. But if I was betting it, I would say lay the points with Wisconsin. I think Bama wins by 7 to 10 points. That's my honest takeaway. And that's just solely because of what I've seen the two offenses they've played be able to do to them. Not necessarily just run the score up, but they have been able to move the ball down the field. And I think Wisconsin's going to be able to do that too. But the difference about Wisconsin is I think they're going to find a way to be able to finish those drives if they're given the opportunity to be in plus territory.
Yeah, I mean,
Is that a
obviously,
fair take?
no, I think it's fair, 100%. I mean, anytime you're going on the road for the first time, obviously, definitely a little worried. I mean, um, I think I know there's a lot of freak out on Twitter over this performance the other night. I get it. I understand what kind of world we're in now. Um, everybody expects everything to be perfect, and it's just not reality. It's just not. I mean, you got a brand new staff. Obviously, it's a really, really good football team. It's a talented football team. Like we know that, but there are going to be some bumps in the road. I mean, it's a whole new like you just don't transition regardless if you're transition from Saban or whoever. Like
Right.
there's gonna be a few growing pains. I mean,
Mhm.
who's to say Saban wouldn't have had growing pains this year? I mean,
You're right.
everybody just freaks out over one one performance. I mean, I get it, I understand it. I want them to play better, just like all the other fans do. But I just think it's going to take time, especially in certain spots. Defensive back, I think Kane Womack, I really like his transparency. The coordinators now meet with the media just like DeBoer every Monday, at lunchtime. He was actually asked about those two balls they got beat on, the DBs did. He explained them. He's like, one of them, our DB, we were getting a signal out there. They were going quick. We were going to try to sub, but we couldn't. We didn't really have time to do that. He kind of got caught looking at some signals, and kind of had his head on the quarterback a little bit too much. Guy ran by him a little bit, had a couple steps on him. The second one, we got beat down the right sideline. It was another DB. Um, he kind of he forced the inside release, which was good, but again, just kind of had his eyes on the backfield maybe a little bit too much, and really him forcing the inside release actually kept it from being completed, even though he got beat on it a little bit. So I do like his transparency. I think that's
Mhm.
cool from coaches because a lot of times you just get coach speak from those guys. So it's kind of cool to see a coach actually explain kind of what's going on. Like, oh, okay, that actually makes sense. Like that's, I see what you're talking about. So I do think they're all teachable moments, but there's going to be growing pains with a very young secondary. I mean, a lot of freshmen you're relying on to play in
Oh, yeah.
a tough position to play early. Like defensive back, that's a tough position to come in and
I
play
think it's the
early.
hardest position to play in all of football,
And when
personally.
you're relying on a lot of young players that are really talented and are going to be great players, and they're already good players, but there's just going to be some growing pains there. I do feel better about the offensive line this week. I think they'll be in a much better position. Obviously, it's going to be on the road, so it's going to be tough. Obviously, going to be a great environment. If they can get the offensive line set, I just think that's going to help a lot, help extend some drives a little bit longer for the offense and take a little pressure off the defense. I do agree with you. I mean, obviously, it's a little concerning teams being able to move the ball a little bit. I do think the red zone defense has been really good through two games. I do think you're going to see teams be able to move the ball a little bit. I don't want to necessarily say bend but don't break, but I do think this is a defense that's going to try to limit big plays as much as possible. I haven't given up many explosive plays. Definitely want to see the tackling be better though. I mean, Byron Brown, give him a lot of credit. The kid's an absolute load. And that was most of the rushing yards off
Yeah.
of quarterback keepers and scrambles by him. So really wasn't like all they're running it down our throat. It was just really good scrambles by him. A couple times they just didn't get it down. Um, but yeah, I agree. It's going to be a really tough game at Wisconsin. I expect better from them too because really
Mhm.
Wisconsin has not played good through two games. They were barely beating Central Michigan in the fourth quarter of their first game. They beat South Dakota. I believe it was 27-13. 27-13 this past week. So haven't been lighting it up themselves. Um, but I would expect a really good game from them. Obviously, they've been looking ahead to this game all off season, the first 2 weeks. I'm sure So it's going to be a great environment. I did think the line was a little big, but I do think if Alabama's offensive line gets settled and can play better, I think they can be at that number. But all in all, it's going to be a great, opening road test. I mean, it's going to be big for later in the season, getting a road test like this, early and then going into an early bye week.
Yeah, absolutely. I would take the under. I think Wisconsin's going to try and dominate time of possession. I think they're going to try to run the ball because they know that they cannot hang with Alabama if they get in the shootout. Not many teams can. They know that they're not one of those teams that can hang with them, so they're going to try to dominate the time of possession. You can guarantee that they're going to try and take the clock and use that to their advantage. So I would take the under 51.5. I don't think it's going to take Alabama near that many points to win this game. But you can guarantee Wisconsin's going to try and control that clock. We've touched on it a little bit, LSU, South Carolina. To me, the biggest thing in this game, if South Carolina is able to get pressure on LSU in the backfield on Nussmeier, then I think they have a really good chance to win this game. I don't think LSU is going to be able to run the ball. LSU hasn't really proven they can run the ball extremely well so far this year. South Carolina has proven they can stop the run pretty good. So if they can get pressure on Nussmeier, that's the difference in this game. If there's pressure on him, I think South Carolina wins. If he can go most of the game and stay pretty clean pocket and be able to decipher his throws down the field, I think he picks them apart. I think LSU wins. So it's on that South Carolina's front seven is how this game's going to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like the +7 for South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's I always like home underdogs, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be
I'm waiting on the hook.
yeah, yeah. I agree with you. I think it's going to be a one possession game. I do think Lenore Sellers. I think Rocket Sanders. He's going to have a big game here pretty soon. If not this week, I think it's
He had a
coming.
decent game, but he ain't had a breakout one yet. You're right.
Yeah, so I think that's coming at some point. Um, I think South Carolina. I think they're going to be try to be physical up front, run the ball a little bit. That's kind of their strength. I mean, a pretty good game for Lenore Sellers. Like you certainly saw flashes, and then you did see some plays where like, okay, first year starter. That's a typical mistake you would see. Had a kind of errant throw on an interception, but all in all, I thought a lot of positives from the game. Certainly, if he can kind of build on that, I do think I don't want to say they're going to try to shorten it necessarily, but I do think they want to run the football. He's capable of doing that. Obviously, a really good running back in Rocket Sanders, some good weapons on the outside that they were able to utilize against Kentucky. So, but I agree with you 100%. I think it comes down to if they can really get pressure on Garrett Nussmeier, make it tougher on him, make him have to get the ball out of his hands quicker. That's definitely going to play huge in South Carolina's favor. It's going to be a great matchup, though, this Carolina front versus, the LSU offensive line, which is one of the better ones in the country. It's going to be a great matchup Saturday, and Williams-Brice is definitely going to be rocking.
Absolutely. Texas A&M and Florida. Florida's about what we thought they were coming into the year. Texas probably a little worse than we thought they were coming into the year, especially after Notre Dame falls to NIU. What does that say about Texas A&M? Texas A&M is a 4-point favorite going to Florida. Griffin's tough place to play. I'm not going to bet this game at all. I expect Texas A&M to win. I just not very high on Florida. We know how we feel about Florida. Nothing against them. I think Texas A&M is going to win this game. I think they got better roster. I'm not laying the points. I'm not laying the spread. I'm not doing anything. I'm staying away from it completely. I do expect Wigman to have a better game. Napier came out today and said that DJ Lagway and Graham Mertz are both going to be playing quarterback. They're going to be doing a dual quarterback system. I can't remember a dual quarterback system in quite some time that I've seen that's been successful. I hate them. I hate dual quarterback systems with a passion. I think it's bad for whatever team's running it. So I think that leans towards Texas A&M too, because your offense is a tougher way to get in a rhythm. So I'm taking Texas A&M to win the game. But I'm not betting anything on this game.
Yeah, I'm not betting on it either. I thought DJ Lagway looked obviously really good his first start against Sanford. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I think Billy Napier might as well just play DJ Lagway because honestly, I think him playing really well is the only slim hope he has of saving his job.
Fair.
I mean, I honestly like I think the only scenario that Billy Napier could save his job is DJ Lagway coming in and being a star and looking really, really good. Then he has a little bit of a feather in his cap, like, hey, I know it's been ugly, but we're building something here. Look at this quarterback. Like, look at this is our guy. Like, I landed him. Like, you already see it coming to fruition. So I'm gonna be honest. Like, if DJ Lagway comes in and plays really well in this game, they're probably just better all rolling. Because I mean, Graham Mertz, he's a fifth year senior. Like, he's not the future of the program. I think the quicker you can get DJ Lagway on the field, and if he's playing at a high level, um, I mean, I think that's his only chance on it, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, so I think DJ Lagway is probably going to get a pretty good run in this game. Honestly, I don't know, man. I think I'm gonna go with Florida. I'm gonna roll with DJ Lagway having a big
To
day.
win?
Um,
To win?
I yeah, I think they win. I think Florida wins at the Swamp. I think they need it. I mean, they need it desperately. Um, I think I'm gonna roll with saying DJ Lagway gets more run than Graham Mertz. I mean, he's coming off a concussion from the Miami game. Um, I don't know. I think that's maybe their and that's not really an indictment against Graham Mertz, but it's just kind of the situation that they're in. It's like, I mean, if it's close, like if you're Billy Napier, it's like, man, I might as well like if the young guy's playing really well, then why not just roll with it. Um, so I think that's the only chance here. This is a really interesting game to me, though. I mean, I know you're kind of like Florida A&M, but I don't know. It's a lot of intriguing storylines in this game. I'm very uh, interested in seeing it, but I'll go with Florida in a minor upset. I think they need it. They need it bad. That goes without saying.
I like it. My lock of the week this week. Haven't given a lock of the week yet this year. Last week I had one. Should have given it to you. It was my lock of the week, my personal lock of the week, and it was Texas minus 7.5. I laid a hundo on that. Yes, sir. Won that. But this week, my lock of the week opened at minus 21.5. It is now at minus 24. And I'm taking this all the way up to 27.5, and that's Georgia. Georgia over Kentucky. Georgia's a 24-point favorite right now. Put the mortgage on it, man. I'm telling you, if South Carolina can hold Kentucky to 6 points, I promise you, South Carolina or Kentucky might not pass midfield on Georgia. Excuse me. South Carolina might or Kentucky might not pass midfield on Georgia, and I mean that with every fiber of my being. You might want to take the over of 45.5 because Georgia might score 50 themselves. My only thing is when Kirby's up 38-0, he usually takes foot off the gas. So I'm just saying I am laying Georgia minus 24. I'm laying them all the way up to minus 27.5. I'm hammering it. I'm putting all I got in my account on it. I'm telling you, this is payday coming. You want to get paid a paycheck separate from your actual paycheck, put it on Georgia minus 24. I'm telling you, it's going to hit.
When you said that, I thought you were going to say, because I was looking at the lines, and Arkansas's up to minus 24 on my employer, UAB, with an absolutely dreadful performance last week in the Bryant Vincent revenge game. I don't know how closely you guys on this podcast follow UAB football, but Brian Vincent took him a nice bite out of UAB Blazers down in Monroe, Louisiana, because it was ugly. I think Arkansas rolls in this spot. I think they're going to be upset after that not closing it out against Oklahoma State. Wouldn't be shocked if they didn't roll UAB here. I know a lot of people won't be tuned into that, but I thought that's what you were going to say. When I heard -24, I thought you were laying with that one.
Hey,
But
I'll
I
ride that one
agree.
too. Is that your lock of the week? I'll ride it.
I, I honestly think I like what I've seen from Arkansas's offense. Through 2 weeks, I mean, 650 yards on what should be a pretty good Oklahoma State team. They absolutely rolled up 1,500 yards on Arkansas Pine Bluff. So, yeah, I'll roll with Arkansas there. I tell you one I do like though. I'll this is my official lock of the week.
Okay.
I think Missouri rolls Boston College. It's 16.5 right now. I like it. I like it. I like it several more points above that on it. Like if it keeps going up, I
What's it
still
at right
like it.
now?
It's Missouri -16.5 against Boston College.
You like
Um,
it big.
I think Missouri rolls. I
Okay.
do. I think
I'm
they
riding it
cover
with you.
that. Um, I mean Boston College, obviously, they're in the top 25 now. Probably a little inflated after that Florida State win. Florida State's just not a good football team
Dog
right
water.
now. I mean, I think Boston College is a solid team. I mean, the good quarterback. I like Castellanos a lot for them. Um, but I just think Missouri shows up ready to go. This is really their first team with a pulse that they played so far. I think they're going to be looking forward to this game. Uh, even a little more hype now coming in the top 25, probably higher than what they would expect Boston College to be. I think they're going to be ready for this game. And at home, I think they roll pretty solid over Boston College. Thank everyone for tuning in. Just be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. Follow us on Twitter at Saturdays_SEC. Gonna be a fun weekend with a few more intriguing matchups, and it just gets better as we go. Though we'll start getting into conference play over the next week or two. Going to be really exciting. Not a ton of huge marquee matchups again, but I think some ones that are really really intriguing. Just appreciate everyone tuning in though, and hope you guys enjoy week 3, and we'll catch you back here next week.
Thank you guys.